My name is Morten, and you can reach me on my Twitter handle if you have any comments for the talk or anything else related to UCommons. I would love to chat. Why are we focusing on the API? I was actually Googling some very fancy quotes from Martin Fowler and from Uncle Bob, and I didn't really find one. So I want to quote Søren, that the code are like puppies. They're very cute, but they run around and piss on the floor everywhere. So you have to clean it up. And if you don't clean it up, it's going to be a mess. Yeah, you're welcome. So the first thing that I want to show you is changelog for v4 of UCommons. That has been a while. That's when we introduced RavenDB into our platform for the very first time. It was a cool new faceted search API that allowed us to do facets on web shops. And it was also very nice. But I feel like the API hasn't received the TLC that it needed to in order to be a stable, nice to work with set of APIs. And it was a little bit disconnected from what was already there. So it's never something that I really feel like it really sparked joy for all of you guys. So we should have done something about that for a long time ago, but luckily we are here today where we can present that now we have done. We have been talking with a lot of different developers, agencies. You all got presented with Jakob. Jakob took me and Søren along for some of the chats, and that has been very, very nice to learn how UCommons is actually being used, what kind of requirements you have for a commerce platform. But it turns out that we came home even more confused after we talked with all of you, because you basically want the same thing, but you don't want the same thing. So it's hard to figure out what to do to cater for all of you. But this is the research that gave the end result that I'm presenting here. It turns out there's a lot of legacy code in the platform. There's too many ways of doing things, which is confusing to you guys. If you want to query a product, you can do it in 10 different ways almost. You can use the APIs, you can go directly on SQL. For me, that work with the platform every day, I think that's a nice, flexible way of working with the platform, but for you guys, it's confusing. And that's one of the key points on the new API, that there's one go-to thing which will do the job for you in the future.
Can I ask something? KP Sales sidestep that if you really want to, or is it really going to be closed off?
You can still do it the old way.
Okay, but there's going to be just a very unified experience.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. Hopefully that will clear it out as well. And thank you for just asking questions. If you have any, just interrupt me. That's you're more than welcome to do that. There's too many pitfalls in the current API. Too many hand grenades that you can step on. Mainly performance related. That didn't come as a surprise for us because we have heard that for many years. So of course that's also one of the key goals to fix that. And as Søren beautifully said, you can get proper performance out of the current APIs, but it's way too hard to do so. It's not safe by default. Sorry. Yeah, and one of the other things that confused us was that some of you like the context APIs that we have, that things just magically appears underneath the surface. Some of you like that, some of you don't like that, which means that what horse do we ride on or settle on? I'm going to answer that in a few minutes. And the context APIs that surface entities, while search library with facets works on documents, they're not compatible with each other. So it was very hard to work with. So that's part of the stack of issues that we are going to tackle. So I'm going to talk briefly about how we addressed this issue or these issues. What is the challenge? Performance is of course one thing. APIs that sparks joy is another thing. We have known for a long time that SQL is not enough to do the job. We always knew, even back in 2013 when we introduced a search engine for the first time, that that is the answer. And again, we came home more confusing because some of you wanted Mongo, some of you wanted Elastic, some of you wanted Lucene, some of you even wanted to just work with SQL still in all the joy that there is to work with that. So focus on the APIs. Of course, it needs to go fast. We still have openness and extensibility as the core value. It's in the DNA of our platform that when you work with WooCommerce, you can replace the bits that you don't like, which means that even though that we're going to use Lucene in V1, you can replace that yourself if you want to and work with your search engine of choice and create that extension. You can actually already do that today, but the way to actually get into a result that are usable is way too steep, so we're going to narrow that scope as well, so it will become even easier. And of course, as part of this project, there's going to be a lot of breaking changes, and I don't anticipate that you can just install the next version and then everything is ready to go. So of course, we want to make sure that there is migration paths with the support and the documentation that you need in order to port old websites over to the new stuff. Yeah. So as Søren has shown earlier, we have done. This is a very bad team. Anyways, we have we've done a lot of measurements to ensure that what we're building actually performs well as well. So this is measurements for cold and warm runs on the old SQL APIs compared to the new APIs. And if you look at the chart down here, there's actually something that are a little bit confusing because you can see that the SQL APIs performs almost just as well as the new APIs that we're building, but that's for warm runs. That is for sites that are up and running, that has been visited already. So if we take a look at the cold runs up here, you can see that performance really sucks. So of course there's a lot of work involved in getting the current APIs to perform. So that's what we're trying to address. Again, I want to mention the Cedar tool that Søren built for the occasion. So we had a nice foundation to build our new stuff on. So we measure on the right things, which means that it doesn't look like this with Avenue Clothing when we do development. It looks like this with fantastic concrete chickens, licensed concrete cars, economic fresh towels. You can't make these names up. You simply can't. It's so nice. It's very fun to click through the UI with all those products in it. And of course, it's something that you can use as well. One of the other issues with our platform is that it's very hard to get data into the platform in a fast manner. This is what this tool addresses as well. A good tool for you to get data into the system fast. You cannot just take it and use it with your data, but there's a lot of good examples on how to actually put product data into a database very, very fast. With that, I will try to talk a little bit about the new tech stack that we're going to use. And this is where my thunder would have came down from the heaven, but Søren already stole it, so thank you for that. We bid Raven farewell. We don't want to ship with Raven anymore. Personally, I like RavenDB. I've worked with it for many years, and it has some very, very cool features. Unfortunately, we ship with a legacy version of RavenDB 2.5. I made a running POC which runs Raven 4.2, which is the new version, in an embedded version. Unfortunately, that requires .NET Core installed on the computer, which is something that goes against our 5 minutes install experience with UCommerce, because it's not something that everyone works with every day, so we cannot force people to run .NET Core on their environment right now, because it's not a requirement for the rest of the systems. So that will mess with the 5 minutes install experience, so bad luck for Raymond. Fortunately, we can instead welcome Lucene and Elasticsearch to the UCommerce family. Lucene is enough for many use cases. We have tested with 500,000 products, which in commerce scale is not very much, but it covers a wide range of projects out there. And for those of you that don't like Lucene or want to scale out and want to work with something that are even more juicy, you can replace it with Elasticsearch once we ship a version that has that as well. So it's going to be completely transparent and pluggable. When Lucene is not enough anymore, you can just swap over to Elastic. At least that's the dream, and I believe we can accomplish that. Yeah, we believe that when we settle on these technologies, we can bring the API to a first-class system that helps you out. So you don't have to care about that anymore. Let's almost soon take a look at some code. Let me introduce you to NotLink. NotLink is our new query API, our new query engine that integrates with the underlying readfast store, Lucene and Elastic. And it's the lowest level component that we're going to ship with. So if you touch that, you cannot possibly get lower unless you start using Lucene directly. We're going to ship it as a link-like API, so it feels natively to what you're doing on a daily basis. We don't want to support a full link API first, because we would never be done. Secondly, there's so many hand grenades in link APIs that it's something that are very hard to control. With the new link-like API here, we can really control what capabilities you have, and it will be very hard for you to screw it up. All right. Everything is baked into the core of this API. So querying and searching, full text search, fuzzy search, all those things that makes up searches is the same as looking up products for a category. So everything is baked into the same thing. So you don't have to use one API to do one thing and another API to do search and a third API to do faceted search. The API is what it is, and that's what you need to use. And you don't have to do anything else with that. And it's going to be safe by default, which means that you cannot load your entire product catalog in one go. There will be implicit skips and takes, which basically ensures you that you'll get product performance with, or be forced to think about not loading everything or too much at a time. And we're probably going to ship abstractions on top of this API to make some of the tedious things about finding GUIDs and combining and stuff like that, so it's more convenient to work with, but you can of course reach the lower level states as well if you want to. The API is going to look like this. It's basically just an interface. So the methods should seem very familiar to you. There's some ordering, some skips, and some takes, and some where clauses. That's it. We don't want to ship with anything else. Probably some faceted search in there as well, but depending on how we want to structure it, this is how the API is going to look like. And the way that we can use it is that you can use it as a Fluent API. And this is still very early stages of how the API looks like. So it's something that it reads very well. It looks like something you're familiar with, so there's not a lot of crazy inventing of the deep dive here. It's Feels fairly familiar, right? Yeah. Over to something a little more complex, but still very familiar. Again, I'm still using the same API here as I did to find products for a category. Here I'm just doing some full text searching as well. And I'm doing some fuzzy down here, and I match some literal down here, which is basically some wildcard search. All of this, we try to make it into a type-safe model, just like LINQ. But it's actually very, very confusing when we have a dynamic metadata model in UCommerce, and we have a flat dynamic model in Lucene, and in between we try to make something that are type-safe. So we have had a lot of fun discussions on how to do that properly, so it sparks joy. So this is subject to change, but we feel like the index that will be provided for Lucene will be the truth, and you should have your own ways of defining those indexes so it contains exactly what you need. Of course, we're going to ship with something out of the box that covers most scenarios, but when you need to create your own indexes, because you will have to at some point, we will provide both a type-safe approach on how to do it, and probably also a more dynamic string-based way of doing it. We haven't decided on all those final pieces yet. So to make sure that we hit the pit of success with our project, that we have a few design goals that we want to take into account when we do these new APIs. First of all, we don't want to surface entities in the API anymore. Previously, you worked with catalog library, you worked with the context APIs where it had entities in them, and you had to work with those. We want to go over to something that are more explicit defined in terms of associations. If you want to get products for a category, you specify or an identifier for that category rather than the actual category entity itself. Because those entities is just a recipe for disaster that it pulls in lazy loading, and that's where performance problems probably are related to that. Another thing, context independent, optionally, basically means that context is great for many scenarios. It gives you some magic where things just happen underneath the surface, but there are some that don't like the context APIs, so you should not be forced to care about those context APIs if you don't want to, which means that you can also very easily deploy your indexes and your data somewhere that are not context dependent, like an HTTP context. So all the code that I showed you was running in a unit test, so it should be pluggable where you need it. So if you don't want the context APIs, you don't have to care about them. And again, we want to make sure that it's scalable. So once you run out of juice with Lucene, you swap over to Elasticsearch instead, and then you're good to go. And we're going to do lots of breaking changes before we're done. Entities are going to go away. We're probably also going to get rid of the whole way of having static APIs on top of all entities. The active record pattern where you could say product at all, and then just load up the entire product catalog in one go. That's my dream at least. I hope I can convince Søren that that's also going to be the case. We'll see. Yeah. So very, very few words about indexing because this is still very early stage. We had a lot of discussions as late as yesterday where we redefined the way that we want to work with indexes and talked about it in a completely different way. So again, subject to change, nothing is set in stone. I already mentioned it a little bit. Indexing and searching is the key to Lucene, just like Leonard talked about previously. So thank you for educating everyone. We have a dynamic metadata model, and we have a dynamic model in Lucene. So we still try to force a type-safe model inside the APIs, which actually can create some confusion, because what is the model that you're indexing with? What is the model that you are querying with? What is the model that you actually get back from Lucene? All those things are things that we still have to figure out. So if you have any ideas or any input, we of course would like to hear that opinion as well. Yeah, and that's more or less about that. So when can you get this? We believe Q1 is optimistic goal for releasing. So you have to wait a little bit, because we have to polish all the different things that are not production ready yet. But we are in a very good foundation already now. Yeah. So thank you.